Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Cyndi Burnett.
And my name is Dr. Matthew Wowood.
This is the Fueling Creativity in Education podcast.
On this show, we'll be talking about creativity topics and how they apply to the field of education.
We'll be speaking with scholars, educators, and resident experts about their work, challenges they face, and digging deeper into new and varying perspectives of creativity.
All with the goal to help fuel a more rich and informed discussion that provides teachers and parents with knowledge they can use at home or in the classroom.
So let's begin.
Welcome back to our fourth episode in our Listen and Learn summer series. As a reminder, this summer we will be sharing 10 actions that teachers can take to facilitate or enhance creativity in the classroom.
These 10 actions emerge from over 200 tips that we've gathered during our podcast interviews with creativity researchers, practitioners, and talented educators.
Now, during each of our episodes, we will share one action and encourage you to generate a 1 or 2 sentence summary of how you can apply that action in your classroom for the upcoming school year.
To help you with this task, we've created a Google spreadsheet that lists the action, includes some takeaways from Matt and myself, and a space for you to include your 1 or 2 sentence summary. The link to this spreadsheet is included in each episode's description. Additionally, if you want to join me in an online discussion each week, check out the creativethinkingnetwork.com, where we will debrief every episode each week.
So our fourth action is initiate discussions on creativity. And our first interview clip comes from our discussion with Monika Kang.
Before you even stress about the curriculum, I would like to share the tip of the language. I say language because we probably unconsciously say certain things, and especially our young ones pick up really fast. Oh, guys, that's not being creative because that's not artistic enough. Of like, look at how creative this friend is because of how they performed in art. All these statements that we unconsciously make in the sake of us trying to compliment our children and support them, we embed this image of what creativity, courage, and curiosity is supposed to look like. So if I don't look like that person who's winning an award and, my teacher is calling that person to be creative, then I clearly must not be creative because I'm failing my grades. I don't find this interesting. Creativity is not my thing. So I'm going to continue to not listen to my teacher right now.
My first thought with this is, we're calling it initiate discussions with creativity. And I think that is the action to take. But I think this is really also about reflecting on discussions and words you use to describe creativity as well, right?
Yes. And I remember talking with Monika about the differences between ideation and artistic creativity and the word creativity and the word innovation, and talking about how they're all different. And I think, when I talk with people, especially teachers, it's not even the students, it's the teachers who really believe that creativity is still just about the arts. It's a little bit frustrating because we have moved so far beyond that as a field and domain. And I'm sure most of our listeners are aware of that, but really making sure that others around you are aware of that is so critical. And that's why we place this in the initiate discussions on creativity action.
And I think to your point, it's very relevant for our listeners because we need to be mindful that, yes, we might understand the construct for creativity, but we need to be careful that when we're interacting with other people, not to make the assumptions that they also understand what creativity is. And that's why we need to go and initiate those discussions. And I'll add is, Cyndi and I mean, we work closely with teachers, maybe in slightly different ways at times, but I think we certainly share the fact that we regularly have discussions about creativity, and you're talking about some of the stereotypes. And I know when I've done my dissertation study and even when I start all of my programs, I always, in my pre-surveys, ask teachers to define creativity. And then I think about how that definition changes at the end of the program. And 9 times out of 10, most teachers will associate the idea of teacher creativity as engagement. It's about, engaging students. I discovered that because of having these conversations with teachers. So, you can actually expand your understanding of the people that you're working with, your collaborators, and to a certain extent, the culture around thinking and acting creatively by having these discussions as well.
Let's have a listen to our second clip from Marta Davidovich. And Marta was actually our very first interview that we did on the podcast, Matt, the very first one. Do you remember that?
I do. I think it's great that we're playing Marta's episode because it was a great first episode.
Yes. And she did her dissertation or doctoral dissertation all around definitions of creativity. So let's listen to her clip.
One thing I want to share before the end of this podcast, and I really want to encourage and thank all the creativity educators and encouragers and positive creativity influencers out there. I have an invitation for you. No definition of creativity is the be-all, end-all. It is one perspective. Use it, challenge it, adapt it, play with it, try it on for size, improve it, and I would love to hear definitions that inspire you to take creative action or invite you to step into the process of creating with joy. The world needs more creativity encouragers, awakeners, and positive influencers. Who you are is creative. The big question right now is, what is the future you are imagining?
What is the future you're imagining, Matt?
Oh, I hate when I get put on the spot with questions, Cyndi. The future that I'm imagining is that we have 20,000 downloads of the Summer Listen and Learn series. And we've got, I don't know, 1,000 educators that are now better at facilitating creativity because of these 10 actions.
Love it. You know, something that really struck me about Marta, aside from her passion, which is evident and was evident in our conversation with her, is her interest in being open to different views of creativity and really exploring it and challenging it. And I know for myself, one of the things that I would do in one of my introduction classes to creativity is I would have students generate their own definition of creativity. And then I would have them do like a think, pair, share in small groups. And then I would have them try to converge and create one definition as a small group. And then I would have them pair with another group and create another definition until we finally ended up with one definition of creativity that we would post on the wall. And sometimes the definition had a couple of words and sometimes it was a long definition. And then we got into exploring the different definitions from scholars and compared our definition with those of the scholars. So it was a great way to sort of introduce this. Obviously, you would probably do this more in a high school level or college level, but it was a great exercise in getting people to really explore different definitions and perspectives.
I love that, Cyndi. And I've done similar activities and still do similar activities with my students as well. But I think that something that Marta said in that first episode, she, to a certain extent, challenged the scholarly definition of creativity that quite often, you know, we associate creativity with, at least those of you who are, you know, familiar with creativity studies and the idea of that production of something new and useful as it relates to a social context. And I think that, you know, I really went away and thought about that. And I think what Marta kind of, her perspective is really it's okay for us to kind of like challenge that view. And so I've kind of moved a little bit away from defining creativity and now do activities that basically initiate discussion. And one of the things that I do with my students is I have them kind of talk about the differences between design and art. And you know what? It goes back to asking an open question. I actually not sure I've actually developed a clear understanding of the relationship and how they're different, but I think it's really led to some really fascinating discussions and discussions that I can usually then connect to creativity. And it's about the value of that outcome. And so I think defining creativity is one option, but another option might be to just kind of like offer how is a scientist creative and how is that creativity different perhaps to how an artist is creative. And whether or not you kind of land anywhere or come up with an agreed understanding, you're still challenging yourself to think about it. And of course, relevant to this tip, initiate a discussion about creativity.
What a great way to end it, Matt. So now before you go, we want to remind our listeners engaged in our Listen and Learn series that we are raffling away various prizes. So first, you will need to listen out to the end of each episode for a single letter, which will help you identify a code word. And once you have the code word, you simply need to email us the code word and a 1 or 2 sentence summary of how you plan to implement one of the 10 actions for creativity. And then you get to choose a prize. And you need to do this all by the end of August. And Matt, you know what I was just thinking? Wouldn't it be fun to bring some of our Listen and Learn listeners onto an episode to debrief with them?
Oh, that would be really fun. Yes, absolutely. And actually, Cyndi, while we've kind of like just hit the pause button in our flow, I do want to say that I've just updated a whole bunch of video tutorials. When I say a whole bunch, I'm talking about 6 very short video tutorials on my website, wordwithclassroom.com. And those video tutorials, in essence, I think is my effort to try and initiate discussions about creativity, because I'm kind of like trying to situate creativity and some of the creativity frameworks from the field inside the context of a teaching and learning environment. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how I approach this concept of teacher creativity, check out my website, wordwithclassroom.com. All right, I think we're ready for the final letter. And so the letter for this episode is S.
Sam, silly.
Sausage.
Start.
Star.
Salad.
Okay, let's end on salad. My name's Dr. Matthew Werwin.
And my name is Dr. Cyndi Burnett.